I never thought I'd find myself in such a messy situation, and honestly, I always thought I was a decent judge of character. But here I am, writing this because my life has turned into a soap opera and I'm left picking up the pieces. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Lisa for 5 years. We had a seemingly perfect life. At least that's what I keep telling myself as I sit here, trying to sift through the wreckage. Lisa and I met in college. She was the life of the party, and I was the geeky guy who had a knack for computers. We complemented each other in a way that felt magical. Fast forward to our wedding day. It was everything I had hoped for. The sun was shining, flowers were blooming, and we had our wedding photographer, Greg, capturing all those picture-perfect moments, or so I thought. Over the past few months, though, something felt off. At first, I brushed it off as typical life stresses. Lisa started coming home later from work, claiming she was busy with projects. I noticed changes in her behavior. She became secretive with her phone and would get defensive whenever. I asked about her day. And then there were the little things. She stopped wearing her wedding ring, something she had never done before. I should have seen the red flags waving, but love can be blinding. One evening, after noticing Lisa had left her phone on the kitchen counter, I picked it up to see a flood of notifications from a messaging app. My heart raced as I opened it, and there it was, flirting messages between Lisa and Greg, the very same guy who had taken our wedding photos. I felt the color drain from my face as I read their exchanges. They were planning to meet up, and the undertones were unmistakable. I could barely breathe as I processed what I was reading. The betrayal cut deep. The man who had captured our happiest moments was the one stealing my wife's affection. That night, I confronted her. I'll never forget the look on her face when I laid it all out: her phone, their messages, the incriminating evidence. She tried to brush it off at first, claiming they were just friends, but the look of sheer panic in her eyes told a different story. "Jake, you don't understand, it's not what you think," she exclaimed. I couldn't help but scoff at her attempts to downplay the situation. "Not what I think. You're texting our wedding photographer about meeting up, and I'm supposed to believe you're just friends." The argument that followed was a whirlwind of accusations, blame, and tears. Lisa insisted that I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, and that I had no right to invade her privacy. But what really stung was her lack of remorse. She defended her actions as if they were justified, as if I had somehow driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. It felt like I was talking to a stranger rather than the woman I had married. I was filled with rage, but even more so, I felt utterly defeated. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting. I went from anger to disbelief, and then to a profound sadness that wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I had invested so much time and love into our marriage, and it felt like it was all crashing down. I spent hours pacing my apartment, replaying every moment in my mind: the laughter, the inside jokes, the dreams we had shared. Everything felt tainted now. As the dust settled, I had to make a decision. This was not just about my feelings. I needed to think about our future and whether I could even bear to look at her after this betrayal. Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? My heart felt heavy as the reality of our situation sank in. I was torn between love and betrayal. The thought of throwing away 5 years of my life was unbearable, yet the thought of living a lie was even worse. I knew I had to act. I needed to take control of my life again, to reclaim what was mine. I started planning how I could move forward, how I could ensure that Lisa understood the gravity of what she had done. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about my own healing. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. And so began my plan to erase every trace of our marriage: photos, memories, and everything in between. If she could betray me so easily, I could just as easily erase her from my life. After the confrontation, things changed drastically. It felt like we were living in a war zone, and I was on high alert, constantly anticipating her next move. Lisa didn't seem to grasp the severity of what she had done. She acted like nothing had happened, attempting to go about our routine as if it were just another day. It was infuriating. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home, and every time I saw her, a wave of resentment washed over me. I spent days thinking about my next steps. I knew I couldn't just let this go. It would eat me alive if I did. The thought of her with Greg, the guy who had been behind the lens capturing every intimate moment of our love, was unbearable. I wanted her to feel the sting of her betrayal, the same way I felt it deep in my gut. It was time for action. One evening, while Lisa was out for a work dinner, I took the opportunity to turn our apartment upside down. I started by combing through our wedding album, a glossy collection of memories that now felt tainted by the reality of her infidelity. Each picture, each smile, became a reminder of the love I once thought was real. I ripped out those pages, one by one, feeling a bizarre mix of liberation and sadness. It was like peeling off a layer of skin, painful, yet somehow necessary. Next, I moved on to our digital life. I had access to our shared cloud storage, which housed thousands of pictures documenting our life together. I felt a sick sense of satisfaction as I began to delete every photo of our marriage. There was something cathartic about it. With each photo that disappeared, I felt lighter. The wedding day, our honeymoon, the countless vacations, gone in an instant. I knew I couldn't erase the memories from my mind, but I could sure as hell erase them from existence. As I worked through the digital files, I stumbled upon videos from our wedding. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the delete button, but I pressed it anyway. I thought about that day, how blissful we had been, and how naive I had been to think that nothing could break us. I felt anger bubbling up inside of me, and I realized that this was the only way I could start to reclaim my life and my sense of self. While I was knee-deep in my digital purge, I couldn't help but wonder how Lisa would react when she discovered what I was doing. I imagined her face when she realized that I had erased our shared history, the memories she had loved to reminisce about. I wanted her to understand that I wouldn't be the one to forgive and forget. I was done being the understanding husband. With every photo I deleted, I crafted a narrative in my head. I was no longer the abandoned husband. I was the one taking control. I thought about how I would confront her once again. This time, I wouldn't just be angry, I would be empowered. I'd show her that I could stand on my own 2 feet without her, that I didn't need the memories she had tainted with her betrayal. I was ready to reclaim my narrative. By the time Lisa returned home, I had a plan. I had deleted the physical reminders of our wedding, but I wanted to confront her with the emotional impact of her actions. When she walked through the door, I could see the weariness in her eyes, but she tried to put on a brave face. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" she chirped, overly cheerful in contrast to my dark mood. I looked her in the eye and asked, "Did you enjoy your dinner with Greg?" The color immediately drained from her face. I watched as her smile faded, replaced by an expression of confusion and fear. "Jake, what are you talking about?" she said, her voice shaking. I could hear the pitch rising, the telltale sign that she was about to spin another lie. I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I wanted her to realize that this was not going to end well for her. I deleted everything, I stated flatly, watching her reaction carefully. "Every photo, every memory we shared together, it's all gone. You made your choice and now I'm making mine." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, searching for the right words. "You can't just erase our memories like that. They meant something," she pleaded, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She was grasping at straws, trying to salvage something that was already lost. "Sure they did," I replied, a bitter smile creeping onto my face. "But they meant something to me too, and now, they're just remnants of a time when I thought you valued our marriage. You've shown me that you don't." The ensuing silence was heavy, and I could feel the tension in the room thickening. I had taken a bold step, one that I hoped would force her to face the reality of what she had done. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to understand that I was not simply going to roll over and accept the betrayal. In that moment, I had a sense of clarity. I wasn't just some passive victim. I was a man taking charge of my life. The emotional turmoil was still there, but I had put myself in the driver's seat, and I was ready to steer my life in a new direction. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long road ahead. The fallout from my confrontation with Lisa was swift and suffocating. After I dropped the bomb about erasing our shared memories, we sat in a stifling silence that felt like a weight pressing down on both of us. I could see the gears turning in Lisa's head. as she tried to piece together her next move, but to my surprise, she didn't lash out. Instead, she seemed to retreat into herself, her expression shifting from outrage to something resembling defeat. "Jake, please," she started, but I cut her off. I was done with her excuses. "No, Lisa, you don't get to plead with me after what you've done. You chose to betray me. There's no coming back from that." Her eyes glistened with tears, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered the messages, the way she had laughed with Greg, the secretive glances. The betrayal was still too fresh, and the anger bubbled back to the surface. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her actions, to realize the pain she had caused, but deep down I knew she would try to play the victim. "You don't understand how lonely I've felt," she said, her voice breaking. "You've been so consumed with work that I just—" "Stop right there," I interrupted, my frustration boiling over. "You don't get to justify cheating on me because you felt lonely. That's not how this works. You could have talked to me. You chose to sleep with someone else instead." Her defenses went up, and I could see the familiar stubbornness returning. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jake. It just happened." She sounded frantic, like she was grasping for any excuse that might save her from the consequences of her actions. "It just happened. That's the best you can come up with." I scoffed. "You think I'd believe that? You had to make a choice, and you chose to betray me. You didn't just trip and fall into bed with him. You made a conscious decision every step of the way." The tears began to spill, and I could see the realization dawning on her face that she had crossed a line from which there was no return. But instead of feeling pity, I felt a rush of satisfaction. She needed to understand that this wasn't just about our marriage. It was about respect, trust, and self-worth. I had sacrificed so much for our relationship, and to have it torn apart was not something I would take lightly. Lisa's sobs filled the silence of our apartment, and I stood, feeling both powerful and powerless. At the same time, I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life by erasing the memories, but the emotional scars were still raw. I couldn't ignore the weight of grief hanging in the air, the finality of what had been lost. "Jake, please, we can work through this," she said, her voice thick with desperation. "It doesn't have to end like this." I shook my head, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness wash over me. "You've already made your choice, Lisa. You've shown me that you're willing to throw away everything we built together for a fleeting thrill. I can't trust you anymore." As I spoke, I felt a sense of finality settling in my bones. This was it. I was done. The idea of working things out felt like a cruel joke, a false promise. I needed to move on, and that meant letting go of the woman I had thought I knew so well. In the days that followed, things became increasingly tense. Lisa tried to engage me in conversations, attempting to pull me back into our old routines, but I was a stone wall. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into feeling guilty for standing my ground. I sought solace in the gym, pouring my energy into workouts, using the physical exertion to channel my anger and heartbreak. And then, one night, as I was laying in bed, I had an epiphany. I realized that my life was not just about the memories I was erasing, but also about building a new future. I could focus on myself, on what I wanted out of life moving forward rather than wallowing in the past. I had spent so long trying to make our marriage work that I had lost sight of who I was. Now it was time to rediscover myself, to focus on my interests, my passions, and my dreams. The next day, I made a list of everything I had put on hold during our marriage: hobbies, friendships, even career aspirations. I started reaching out to friends I hadn't seen in ages, signing up for classes that intrigued me, and even exploring new interests. I immersed myself in activities that made me happy, realizing that I could find joy outside of my marriage. Lisa was still around, but I began treating her more like a roommate than a wife. I withdrew emotionally, not allowing her to pull me back into her web of manipulation and guilt. I remember one day she tried to talk to me about the possibility of going to couples therapy. I laughed, saying, "You want to go to therapy after you cheated? You've got to be kidding me." I could see her frustration boiling over, but I couldn't care less. As I moved forward, I did so with a sense of empowerment. I was no longer the victim. I was reclaiming my life and my happiness. I was learning to love myself again, a process that was both painful and liberating. I knew that healing would take time, but each step I took felt like a victory. I was ready to embrace the future and leave the past behind, no matter how messy the road ahead might be. As the days turned into weeks, I became more resolute in my decision to reclaim my life. The initial shock of Lisa's betrayal was slowly fading, replaced by a newfound determination. I had learned to channel my anger and sadness into something productive, and the more time I spent focusing on myself, the more I realized how much I had neglected my own needs. I dove headfirst into activities I had abandoned during our marriage. I joined a local hiking group, something I had loved to do before we got married. There was something incredibly refreshing about being outdoors, surrounded by nature and like-minded people. I formed connections with new friends who didn't know my past, and it felt liberating to share laughs and experiences without the cloud of my previous relationship hanging over me. At the same time, I began to explore my creative side. I had always enjoyed photography, but I had let that passion slip away while trying to support Lisa's career aspirations. I picked up my camera again, capturing the beauty around me, and it felt cathartic. Each click of the shutter was like a release, a way to document my journey of healing and self-discovery. I even decided to enter some local photography contests, eager to get my work out into the world. During this process, Lisa remained a constant presence in my life, but I felt increasingly detached from her emotionally. I would come home from my outings, invigorated and alive, only to find her sulking on the couch or trying to engage me in conversations that felt hollow. She'd ask about my day, and I'd answer, but I could sense the desperation in her voice, the way she clung to any shred of hope that things might turn around. But I was no longer interested in her attempts to rekindle a flame that had long extinguished. One evening, as I was sorting through my photography gear, I heard Lisa's voice from the living room. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked, her tone uncharacteristically serious. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I had grown accustomed to our routine of avoidance, and the thought of having a heartfelt conversation made me uneasy. I set my camera down and walked into the living room, where Lisa sat with a look that was a mix of frustration and vulnerability. "I know things have been rocky between us, but I'm really trying to make sense of everything," she said, her voice wavering. "I miss the way we used to be." I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms over my chest. "Do you, really? Because it seems to me like you're just trying to restore your comfort zone after what you've done." Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of genuine regret. But then the familiar defensiveness emerged. "Jake, I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I just want to understand how we can move forward. Maybe we need to work on rebuilding our foundation," she suggested, her eyes pleading with me. "Rebuilding? That's a nice term for what you did, Lisa," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You want me to just forget that you turned to someone else when things got tough? You want to put on rose-colored glasses and act like we can just sweep everything under the rug? It doesn't work that way." Her frustration boiled over and she stood up, throwing her hands in the air. "You're being unreasonable. I made a mistake and I'm trying to take responsibility for it. Why can't you see that?" "Because responsibility means owning up to the damage you've caused, not trying to manipulate me into forgiving you because it makes you uncomfortable." I shot back, the heat rising in my chest. "You broke my trust, Lisa, and trust isn't something that gets rebuilt overnight. You shattered it when you decided to sleep with Greg." She slumped back down on the couch, the fight leaving her. "I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me right now, but can't we at least talk about how to make things better?" Her voice was quieter now, tinged with a hint of desperation. I paused, contemplating her request. There was a part of me that wanted to believe her, to think that maybe there was a way to salvage something from this wreckage. But then I recalled the countless times I had looked past red flags in our marriage, the times I had convinced myself that everything would be okay. This was different. I wasn't the same man I had been before the affair. I was stronger, more self-aware, and no longer willing to settle for anything less than what I deserved. "Lisa, I think it's better if we focus on ourselves for now," I said, my voice softer but still resolute. "I need to find my footing again, and I can't do that with you constantly trying to pull me back into the past. I think it's best if we take some space." Her face fell, and I could see the hurt reflected in her eyes, but I was firm. "We need to figure out who we are apart before we can even think about what we might be together in the future." The look on her face was one of defeat, and I felt a pang of guilt, but I knew that I had to prioritize my own well-being. I had spent far too long compromising my own happiness for the sake of someone else. Lisa had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. As the days continued to pass, I embraced my newfound independence. I poured myself into my photography, spending weekends capturing the beauty of the world around me. Each click of the shutter felt like a step further away from the pain that had weighed me down for so long. I began to see the world in a new light, one filled with possibilities and hope. But even amidst my newfound freedom, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to confront Lisa one last time. I wanted to make sure she understood how serious I was about moving forward, about leaving the past behind. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to deliver the final blow to the remnants of our relationship. It was time to have that talk. The moment of confrontation felt inevitable, and as the days wore on, I found myself mentally preparing for it. I needed to make it crystal clear to Lisa that I was done with the charade, done with the lies, and done with the remnants of a marriage that had been shattered. I couldn't linger in this limbo of uncertainty any longer. I had to draw a hard line. One evening, after another day spent pursuing my passions, I returned home and found Lisa sitting at the dining table, a notebook spread out in front of her. The sight of her hunched over, furiously scribbling, made me feel a surge of anger mixed with pity. She had been trying to reach out to connect with me in some way, but I was no longer interested in her attempts at reconciling. "Jake, can we talk?" she said, looking up at me with desperate eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I want to make real changes. I want to show you that I'm committed to fixing this." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "Lisa, we need to have a serious conversation. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. Your affection for Greg isn't something that can just be swept aside." Her expression shifted from hope to apprehension. "I know you're upset and I don't blame you, but I really want to work on us. I can change, I swear." "You say you want to change, but what does that even mean?" I replied, my voice steady but firm. "You think I can just take your word for it? You made a choice, and that choice hurt me deeply. You need to understand that trust isn't something that can just be rebuilt with words." She was quiet for a moment, and I could see the realization hitting her. "What are you saying, Jake?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Are you saying you want to end everything?" "I think we need to seriously consider it, yes," I said, the weight of my words heavy in the air. "I've spent the last few weeks rediscovering myself, and I've realized that I can't be with someone who thinks it's okay to cheat. You've shown me your true colors, and I'm not sure I can ever trust you again." Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a pang of sadness at the thought of ending our marriage, but I quickly pushed it aside. This wasn't about her. It was about me. "I don't want this to be a rash decision, but I think it's clear that we're no longer on the same path. I need to prioritize my own happiness, and that means walking away from a relationship that's become toxic." "Jake, please don't do this," she begged, her voice breaking. "We can go to counseling, we can try to fix this together. I can prove to you that I want to be better." I shook my head, feeling a mix of frustration and resolve. "It's not about trying to fix something that's broken, Lisa. It's about understanding that some things can't be repaired. You've hurt me in a way that can't be undone. I need to move forward without you." She let out a sob, and although a part of me wanted to comfort her, I knew I couldn't. "I'm sorry it came to this, but I'm not the same person I was when we got married. I deserve better, and so do you." As I spoke those words, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. I was finally putting myself first, taking control of my narrative. It was scary to think of life without Lisa, but it was even scarier to think of living a life constrained by the betrayal that had shattered everything I thought I knew. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of our conversation hanging heavily in the air. I could feel the tension crackling between us, and I knew that this was the end of an era. Lisa was still sitting at the table, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. I wanted to reach out to offer some sort of comfort, but I knew that would only complicate things further. "Take some time to process this," I said softly, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. "I think we both need space to figure out what our next steps are. I'll start looking into separating our finances and figuring out the logistics. It's best if we both focus on our own paths moving forward." As I walked away, I felt an odd combination of grief and relief. I had closed a door that had been open for far too long, and while it hurt to leave Lisa behind, I knew it was the right decision. I had finally taken a stand for myself, and I wouldn't allow myself to be dragged back into the pain of betrayal. The days that followed were a blur. I started to pull together the pieces of my life that had been scattered by the upheaval of our marriage. I reached out to friends, sharing my situation and leaning on their support. They rallied around me, offering encouragement and understanding that helped me regain my footing. I was reminded that I wasn't alone in this journey, that I had people who cared about me and wanted to see me happy. As I began the process of separating from Lisa, I felt a surge of clarity. I was finally moving forward, leaving behind the weight of betrayal and hurt. I began to explore the idea of living on my own, of creating a space that was truly mine. I wanted to design a life that reflected who I was now, not who I had been when I was with Lisa. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I could feel myself healing. I was determined to turn this painful experience into an opportunity for growth. I wouldn't let the scars of betrayal define me. Instead, I would use them as a catalyst for self-discovery and resilience. The journey of reclaiming my life had only just begun, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As I navigated the aftermath of my separation from Lisa, I discovered that healing was not a linear journey. There were days filled with clarity and empowerment, where I felt like I was finally taking charge of my life. Then there were days when the weight of loneliness crept in, and I would find myself reflecting on the memories we had created together, memories that now felt tainted and bittersweet. It was a complex emotional landscape, but I was determined to face it all head-on. I rented a small apartment, a blank slate for me to start anew. The process of moving in was cathartic. I was no longer packing away the remnants of a shared life, but instead choosing each item that represented who I was and who I wanted to be. I painted the walls a soothing blue, hung up my photography on the walls, and filled the space with plants that brought a fresh vibrancy to my home. Every decision I made felt like a step toward reclaiming my identity, a reminder that I was not defined by my past or my relationship with Lisa. One day, while I was out for a walk, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Lisa. My heart sank for a moment, but I took a deep breath and opened the message. It was an apology, a long-winded explanation of how she had been doing a lot of soul-searching since our separation. She expressed regret for her actions, stating that she had started attending therapy and wanted to take responsibility for her mistakes. As I read her words, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to feel compassion and hear her out, but another part of me was still raw from the pain of her betrayal. I thought about everything I had gone through, the nights spent wrestling with heartache, the countless hours spent rebuilding my self-worth. I realized that while it was important for Lisa to take responsibility for her actions, it was equally important for me to maintain my boundaries. I took a moment to respond, crafting my words carefully. "I appreciate your message, Lisa. I'm glad to hear that you're working on yourself, but I need you to understand that I'm focused on my own healing. I can't go back to what we had. I wish you the best, but I need to keep moving forward." After hitting send, I felt an unexpected weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer tethered to her narrative. I was free to write my own story. It was a crucial moment of clarity, a realization that I could wish her well while still prioritizing my own happiness. In the months that followed, I continued to embrace this newfound independence. I deepened my friendships, allowing myself to connect with people who uplifted me and supported my journey. I even ventured into the dating scene cautiously at first. Each date was a reminder that I was capable of love, capable of connection without being defined by my past pain. There was a moment, while on a date with someone new, that I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I was sitting across from a woman named Mia. We talked and laughed effortlessly, and I realized I was truly enjoying myself. It was a stark contrast to the heaviness I had felt during my marriage. This was light, this was fun, and most importantly, it felt genuine. It reminded me that while I had faced heartache, I was also capable of experiencing joy again. As I reflected on my journey, I saw how far I had come. I had transformed from a man who had been betrayed into someone who was learning to love himself. I had faced the pain, let it wash over me, and emerged stronger on the other side. I had carved out a life that was reflective of my true self, not just the version of me that had existed within the confines of my marriage. I knew that healing would take time, and there would be days when I might stumble back into the memories of my past, but I was determined to keep moving forward. I had learned to trust myself again, to prioritize my happiness, and to embrace the beauty of new beginnings. If there's one piece of advice I would offer to anyone going through a similar experience, it's this: don't let betrayal define you. Use it as a catalyst for growth. Surround yourself with people who uplift you and pursue what makes you happy. You have the power to reclaim your life, to rediscover who you are outside of a relationship. In closing, I may have lost a marriage, but I gained a deeper understanding of myself. I'm ready to face whatever comes next, and I'm excited about the possibilities that await me. The future is mine to shape, and I plan to make it a beautiful one.